Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the best place for the best takes. I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show. I thought All-Star Weekend, it's going to be a calm week. A lot of broadcasters are out of town. Football season is over, at least for the NFL. It was going to be a little bit more quiet this week. I thought we could go over some mock drafts, some quarterback rankings, some potential trades. None of that happened because just as I'm hitting the air this morning, two massive stories that are pretty much, they're dumpster fires, have hit the news cycle. And honestly, it's more enjoyable. We're going to have more to talk about. But let me tell you, both of these stories have got me scratching my head and wondering, as someone who's never needed glasses, if I need some. Because reading those stories, I could not believe what is coming to fruition. So let's start with the big one. Russell Westbrook this morning is now an LA Clipper. It turns out he's not going to be leaving Crypto Arena. He will walk into the same arena to play the rest of his games this season. And he will, of course, join Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Now, just as I turn off my phone to start talking to you guys, I'm on Instagram and I see all the new big three graphics of Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Kawhi Leonard. And I can't help but laugh. People are acting like this is a big three, like this is 2016 or 2017. Oh my God, what could be? I mean, this has to be one of the most underwhelming and disappointing situations in the NBA. Since a couple of years back, 2021, 2020, during the pandemic, when this new shakeup happened across the NBA where duos became the big thing, where Russell Westbrook was still in the Wizards at the time, but LeBron James was joined by AD, and then we had Paul George with Kawhi Leonard. We thought, oh, maybe this is a team that can shake up the league. They can shake up Los Angeles. They can become the new kings of LA. Yeah, right. It never happened, and none of it has ever come to fruition. And now fans and analysts, which is a little bit shocking and disappointing as well, are acting like this is going to be the next big thing. They're calling it must-see TV. No, it's not. They are absolutely not must-see TV. The Clippers are signing one of the least efficient, one of the, most overrated players in the NBA. Even still, I mean, when efficiency matters, when three-point shooting matters, when ball usage matters, when every possession matters, Paul George has proven that he can't play or work with anyone. I mean, the reason he went to Los Angeles after bouncing around 4 times in 4 years, now it's 5 times in 5 years, the reason he did that was because LeBron James can save careers. We know that Kyrie Irving was considered a bust long before LeBron went back to Cleveland, and he resurrected his career. Kyrie Irving is now considered one of the best point guards in the NBA. He gives guys their second and third chance. And for Russell Westbrook to not work under LeBron was the biggest indictment to his career there could have ever been. It was the worst decision that Russell Westbrook ever made. It would have been better to think, Russ, maybe he just didn't work out in those places because of coaching. No. Now you know. Russell Westbrook didn't work out because of Russell Westbrook. He is his own worst enemy. And this Clippers squad, they're not going anywhere. I don't care about what people are calling a big three. Listen, Paul George had one of the worst performances in an all-star game I have ever seen. He shot 0 for 9 from three-point range. He shot 30% from field goal range. I mean, he was awful. In a game that was meant to be fun and scoring dominant and a lot of guys just putting up points, Paul George put up a whopping 8 points. I don't care if he was a reserve or coming off the bench. He was awful. That shows you everything you need to know about Paul George. And then talking about the actual on-court attributes, the Clippers, people want to talk about postseason and playoffs. They don't have a leader. Kawhi Leonard can't be considered a leader when he doesn't talk. That's not a good leadership style. I want a vocal leader, someone to rally my locker room, someone to call them out when necessary. Kawhi Leonard can't do any of those things. And you may think, oh no, he can just be a good player on the floor. No, your best player has to be your leader. It's what's plagued Kevin Durant's career his entire life. That's why he went to Golden State and succeeded, because he could be a good player. He didn't have to be a leader. Everyone knows that that team was led by Stephen Curry. So we've seen this work out in key situations where there is another leader, and we haven't seen it work out when there is no leader. Kawhi Leonard is not a leader of a basketball team. The Clippers, if they want to make it to the postseason, need a ringleader. They need someone to rally them together. Kawhi Leonard's not the leader. Paul George is certainly not the leader. And Russell Westbrook is definitely not a leader. I mean, you're talking about 3 guys who all have proven careers of not being the guy, not being the leader. Sure, Kawhi Leonard was amazing when he was with the Raptors, and he resurrected his career there. And quite frankly, in retrospect, as we all thought, he should have stayed there and not left to the Clippers to join a dysfunctional organization and a underwhelming career in Paul George. But that's life. I mean, this is just, it is the gathering of broken toys. Like that old Christmas movie, it's like the island of broken toys. That's what the Clippers are. An aging, athletic, turnover machine in Russell Westbrook, who might also be a locker room cancer as far as we're concerned with how many locker rooms and teams he's blown up on the way out. Paul George, who could never really elevate himself to be that number one guy on a team. Didn't do it with the Pacers. Hasn't been able to do it in LA. I mean, his career has just been underwhelming. And Kawhi Leonard, who, besides not being a vocal leader, can't stay on the floor. This is the worst gathering of teammates possible. The Clippers are going to get nothing out of this. I don't know if they're paying a luxury tax, but they're essentially throwing all this money down the drain. Because in a West that has become so competitive, if they think that Russell Westbrook was going to be the deciding factor in them becoming a favorite or at least a potential team to win the West, it's not going to happen. That is an awful team. They are not must-see TV, and the Clippers will go nowhere in the playoffs, especially now that they have joined Russell Westbrook. He doesn't help them. If anything, he hurts them. These stories make me question everything in sports, but they also show me where these leagues are headed because of just how much revenue they're generating, the amount of ratings that they are able to gather. I mean, it shows you the power of sports. This morning, this story just totally caught me off guard. So Mike Florio, who is with Pro Football Talk, reported this on Twitter. Giants quarterback Daniel Jones wants more than New York has offered him, possibly as much as $45 million per year or more, a source tells Mike Florio. Jones recently switched agents from CAA to Athletes First. So a little bit of background. CAA is Creative Artists Agency. They're one of the biggest and best talent agencies in the world. They primarily work with artists and actors, but they also have a CAA football division. So I guess Daniel Jones was represented by them, and now he's switching to Athletes First. Rule number one, if there's any athletes watching this is not a trick by your agents. This is real advice. One of the worst things you can do when you're in the middle of contract negotiations or renegotiations is switching agents. Even broadcasters will tell you. Stephen A. Smith, in his most recent book, he talked about one of the biggest mistakes he made when renegotiating with ESPN when he had that little break in 2009 was switching agents. It shows that you as the individual, as the talent, as the player, are a little bit more desperate and that things are breaking down and they're not going the way you want to. You already lose leverage in the mind of the person you're negotiating with. So that's the first mistake that Daniel Jones made. But I read that, and this is on the heels of last week, midweek. I didn't get to talk about this. I was shocked because a report came out that Daniel Jones was asking for $35 million, or that's what the contract would at least look like. And I couldn't believe it. Now, I may have overreacted initially after reading it, and then I thought to myself, oh, well, the cap is going up. The cap hit won't be that large, especially after guys like Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts sign their contract extensions. You know, he'll probably be, a middle-of-the-pack quarterback in terms of salary, and on the field, he is a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. So I didn't have too much of a problem with it after I sat down and really reevaluated it. But this bothers me. Now, I know that a lot of older media people always take the side of the organization. Don't pay the player. And then you have the young people in television like myself or just out there who are sports broadcasters or analysts or want to become them, and they say, pay the player, give them their bag, get that bag. And I am somewhere in the middle of that. But this situation right here, $45 million per year, Daniel Jones is asking for. That is the most ridiculous, outlandish thing I have read all year. And people may say, players will probably deny this kind of report. No, the media doesn't know what they're talking about. They're inventing that. No, these leaks come from somewhere. Normally, when I am my calmest, I would say, hey, we need to pay attention to where this leak is coming from. I always say that. Is it coming from the player, from the organization? Who does it benefit the most? Quite frankly, it doesn't matter. Either the Giants are putting this out there because they want the world to know how ridiculous and outlandish Daniel Jones is with his demands, or Daniel Jones put it out there thinking that the public would defend him wanting $45 million. This is what I chalk it up to. Salary cap or not, Patrick Mahomes is being paid an annual average salary of $45 million per year after his big first extension with the Chiefs, right? $45 million. Patrick Mahomes just won a Super Bowl and the last 3 games of the year on one leg. He had an MVP before his contract extension. He just won one afterwards. He had a Super Bowl before the contract extension. He now has another one afterwards. He's been selected to the Pro Bowl every single year that he has started. He's been selected to the All-Pro team, I believe, twice. That's Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league. Joe Burrow, who's about to sign a contract extension for over $200 million, is being reported. Well, he was a dark horse MVP candidate this year. In his first full year as a healthy starter, he led his team to the Super Bowl and consistently has gone to the playoffs in back-to-back years with underwhelming defenses and awful offensive lines. And he still finds a way to win and succeed. He is the best situational quarterback in the NFL. Jalen Hurts, who had an awful postseason performance last year, he has redeemed himself. In his 3rd year with a new weapon, he now had an amazing year all year, very dominant, had one of the best Super Bowl performances of all time, certainly of my lifetime, over 370 total yards. Yeah, he's going to get the money that he's asking for. He can ask for $45 million. Justin Herbert is the prototype, exactly what you want your quarterback to look like and play like. His rookie year with the worst offensive line in the league set the record for completions, touchdowns, and most games with more than 300 passing yards. All of that while having the worst offensive line in the league. Who am I missing? Lamar Jackson won MVP. I'm just thinking to myself, I can't imagine. I mean, those guys, either they're making $45 million per year like Patrick Mahomes, or the rest of them deserve that. And they will be able to ask for that if they're looking to go the route of, I want my money now, I don't want the team-friendly deal. But Daniel Jones, a middle-of-the-pack quarterback asking for $45 million per year, I get it. He bet on himself. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. You kind of have to stick it to him when you're at the negotiating table. But to act like you're a top 5 or top 10 quarterback talent in this league, Daniel Jones is the epitome of mediocrity and average. He's an average quarterback. Sure, I talked good about him on this show. I said I thought his best strength was on his best day, recency bias included. He was one of the best 3rd down quarterbacks I'd probably ever seen. All year long, he was good on 3rd down. But for Daniel Jones to think that it warrants $45 million per year, I don't even know the amount of years that he wants. Does he want $45 million per year and a long-term deal? Because that makes 0 sense. At least maybe I can get this if $45 million per year for 2 years or for 3 years. But to sign a long-term extension or demand one like you're a franchise quarterback, 4 years, $45 million each, I'm in shock. I mean, I'd as the front office, I'd want Daniel Jones to pay Brian Daboll, the coach of the year, $45 million per year out of his own pocket before I'm giving Daniel Jones $45 million per year. The cap could double tomorrow in the NFL, go over $400 million, and I would still question giving Daniel Jones $45 million per year. I get it. Quarterbacks run this league. I've talked about this all season long. I talked about it before the season. One of my first takes on this show about Russell Wilson and how he deserved the big contract that he got. Even a guy like that who's been a bust, at least for the first year that he was with the Broncos, you get it. This league is run by quarterbacks. He had precedent. He was one of the best quarterback talents in the league in what we thought was a dysfunctional organization in Seattle. So we got it. I can't justify it. $45 million per year. Daniel Jones, who's not a dual threat quarterback. He's a little bit more athletic than average. I'll give him that. But this whole thing of, look at how he runs and he escapes the pocket. No. This guy played at Duke. He was overdrafted. He had a good year under Brian Daboll. They minimized his mistakes. They elevated him. They got the most out of him. Sure, he didn't have a very talented roster, and he still won them a playoff game against the dysfunctional Vikings organization. That sample size, that performance this year does not warrant $45 million per year. This is one of the most outlandish reports I've ever seen. It seems to be true because multiple people besides Mike Florio are talking about this. I can't believe it. I really can't. I mean, Daniel Jones is out of his mind asking for this kind of money. And I genuinely hope, I've never said this about a player. I hope he gets an extension. I genuinely hope that they do not give him this. It's bad for him. It's bad for the league and for precedent. And if Daniel Jones thought he didn't have any weapons this year, that they were lacking talent and lacking perimeter ability and lacking wide receivers, guess what? You're not going to get Saquon Barkley back on a rookie contract. And if this goes south and you have to franchise tag Daniel Jones, that means you're losing Saquon Barkley on the open market. Daniel Jones is going to have to do more with even less talent. And I don't think he's capable of doing that. I mean, this is 2 weeks, or just a week after the Super Bowl, after we watched one of the best Super Bowls I have ever seen in my lifetime, of Jalen Hurts, the ultimate quarterback talent, putting on an absolute clinic against the best quarterback in the league, Patrick Mahomes, watching those guys battle it out, watching the AFC and NFC Championship a couple weeks before that, and seeing the talent on the field, those guys that some of them don't even make that kind of money, and Daniel Jones, who's been gone, who hasn't played a single snap of football in over a month because he's not good enough to play down the field or play in playoff game situations down the line, that's the guy who a week after that Super Bowl performance by those two quarterbacks is asking for $45 million per year. One of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen, and I don't think he'll get it. I think the Giants are pretty much done with him after reading this. I can't, as an owner in good faith, say, yeah, after we're offering you potentially $35 million, which is already over the market, more than what you're worth. Last thing on this, I want to get away from this. Do you think any other team, if the Giants don't sign Daniel Jones, would be willing to give him $45 million per year? The Houston Texans, who are the worst organization in football right now, wouldn't touch that contract. You give that to a franchise quarterback. At the end of the day, $45 million seems to be the amount that you pay a franchise quarterback. Daniel Jones, on his best day, is not a franchise quarterback in the NFL. This is ridiculous. So now that we've got those two breaking news stories out of the way, we can focus on the fun stuff, the mock drafts, the rankings, the potential trades and whatnot. So this is a segment that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and let me explain. So this weekend, I decided to start working on my quarterback rankings for the 2023 season. And I know we've got plenty of time before August, and I probably won't put out my final list until August, at least the top 10, top 15 guys. But, you know, we just saw some of these top quarterbacks play. They're fresh in our minds. The best guys like Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, we saw them play about a week ago. And some of the other guys in the top 10, we saw them play about a month ago, some point in the playoffs. And essentially, when I was doing my quarterback rankings, I had a problem ranking Josh Allen in my top 5. And I know a lot of people might say, Ben, he's an automatic top 5 quarterback. What do you mean you had a problem with that? Well, to me, he's not automatic. And I noticed that on other people's early lists, the preseason list, the way too early quarterback rankings, he was ranked pretty high. And essentially, the reason I have a problem with that is because I don't feel comfortable with the regression that Josh Allen went through this year without Brian Daboll as his quarterback coach, and now relying more heavily upon the guidance and coaching of Sean McDermott, who is a defensive-minded head coach who doesn't understand the intricacies and the ins and outs of offensive football. And with him having more of a hand in Josh Allen's mentoring this year, you clearly saw the drop-off. Josh Allen got worse. Although the overall roster had more talent and they were supposed to be better, the result was worse. They really started to look bad down the stretch. Their offensive incompetency was evident. And so I decided to do this new segment that I've been wanting to do for a while, Josh Allen versus. Now, it won't be Josh Allen every time I do this segment. It's going to be more of a blind resume. In this case, our inaugural versus is going to be Josh Allen versus, you'll see, the different quarterbacks. And so what I wanted to do was show Josh Allen, 3 stats that I think are the most basic and important to a quarterback: passing yards, completion percentage, and QBR. And I wanted to compare that to the other quarterbacks. And I did put a cutoff here. I did since week 12, because I think week 12 is that perfect point in the season where, the tricks, all the trick plays, all the things that you think, other teams haven't figured this out yet. By week 12, other teams have enough film that they've figured you out. you're playing real football from week 12 on. The teams that were at the beginning of the season were struggling, that found their footing, they are now doing well. They are formidable teams. This is real football from week 12 on. So Josh Allen, since week 12, had 1,353 passing yards, 60.8 completion percentage, and his QBR was 96.2. Since week 12, that's pretty good. Now, this next NFL quarterback, we don't know who he is, but since week 12, he had 2,009 yards in the air, 70.7 completion percentage, and a 96.7 QBR. This quarterback is better in every single stat by a long shot. Who is it? It's Justin Herbert, quarterback for the Chargers. Now, we can understand that. Justin Herbert is the prototype of what you want a quarterback to look like and play like. We get it. So Justin Herbert's better than Josh Allen by those metrics. When real football starts to matter, week 12 on, Justin Herbert beat him. Let's take a look at this next quarterback. Since week 12, 1,779 passing yards, 68.8 completion percentage, 103.4 QBR. Wow, this quarterback has a great QBR and is still better than Josh Allen in every category. Who was it? It was Trevor Lawrence. Wow. So Trevor Lawrence, who started to become one of the better quarterbacks late, who I talked about early in the season, hey, since week 12, look out for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Sure enough, he also has been better than Josh Allen down the stretch of this season. Let's take a look at the next quarterback. Since week 12, 1,996 passing yards, 66.5% completion, 107.5 QBR. Wow. Who is this guy? Jared Goff? Jared Goff, who was a first-round pick, who was considered a bust, who was traded away by the offensive guru Sean McVay, who went to the Lions, which is where talent goes to die in a non-TV market. And he did that well? Wow, Jared Goff. We know he had a good offensive line. We know he had good talent, but he beat out Josh Allen, who we considered to be, a lot of people, 1 or 2 or 3 in the NFL? Wow, that's interesting. Last quarterback here for this comparison. NFL quarterback, unknown, since week 12 has 2,086 passing yards, 69.5 completion percentage, and 102.1 QBR. Wow. Who could this possibly be? Kirk Cousins, who the NFL loves to hate on. 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins, the guy who does awful in clutch games, but does well when no one's watching. Yeah, that guy. Funny enough, he did better than Josh Allen down the stretch of the season. And another thing here, regardless of the stats, Kirk Cousins and Josh Allen are starting to look kind of similar. Not in their playing style, but in the end result. Sometimes they've got momentum, other times they don't. But when it comes to the end of the season, both come up incredibly short in the most awful ways. They flare up, and it becomes like a dumpster fire. It's awful. Kirk Cousins won a playoff game, or rather, did not win a playoff game, did awful against the opening round against the Giants. I mean, he collapsed. He showed you why Kirk Cousins is not considered widely one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? He showed who he is. He showed his true colors. Well, Josh Allen in the first round of the playoffs against the Miami Dolphins and a third-string quarterback in Skylar Thompson, who had his best game ever in the NFL and the NFL preseason, he almost lost to that guy. Him and Sean McDermott and that powerful Bills roster, they almost lost to a first-year head coach in Mike McDaniel and a third-string quarterback in Skylar Thompson. And they ended up getting blown out by the Bengals the following week. I mean, they looked incompetent. The Bengals literally put a clinic on them. We saw who the Bills were, but Kirk Cousins, awful performance in the playoffs. Josh Allen, almost gone in the first round of the playoffs. He survived. He lived to see another day, but he was out the next week. These guys are a little more similar than you may think. And sure, Josh Allen is better than Kirk Cousins, but there are some flaws that no one is willing to acknowledge on the field. You can see it with your own eyes, and you can also see it in the box score and the numbers. Josh Allen simply wasn't as good a quarterback as people hyped him up to be down the stretch of the season when it mattered most, when he had been the longest amount of time without Brian Daboll. the gears started coming off. The chain of your bike was ruined after a block. I mean, this has been really bad for Josh Allen. It has been a true indictment season on him if you really look at these numbers. And if you didn't see it this year, maybe you'll catch on next year. Who knows? It might be even worse. The Bills are going to lose a lot of talent. I'll cover that story more in depth later in the offseason, but this is just, I'm throwing this out there as a feeler so that you guys can see where my head is at, just where Josh Allen ranks amongst these guys. I mean, sometimes other people will do these blind resumes and they'll show you, oh, it's kind of even. This quarterback hasn't beaten this stat, but he hasn't beat here. No, I was very intentional with these examples. The quarterbacks that I showed you since week 12 in all three categories always were better than Josh Allen. That is an indictment on Josh Allen, and it is something to look out for going into next year and going into the season as we make our quarterback rankings. On Friday, the NFL's first big domino fell. Friday afternoon, it was reported that Eric Bieniemy would be joining the Washington Commanders, not as their head coach, but as their offensive coordinator. He would be leaving the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions, and of course, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And so regardless of what you think of the situation, a lot of people debated on Friday and Saturday morning, was it right? Did Eric Bieniemy make a mistake? Should he have stayed with the Chiefs? Whatever you believe, it's clear what Eric Bieniemy's intentions are. He thinks he'll have a better chance of becoming a head coach if he leaves and he goes to another team and he proves success offensively with them and he becomes a play caller, which was the big conversation for not only this year, but really previous years. So Eric Bieniemy now has a new team, new colors, new coast. And he's now in the East, part of the NFC as well. So he's one of the better offensive minds in the NFC East for sure. And a lot of people are debating, what will this look like? What kind of success could the Commanders have? What will this look like with Philly losing so much talent? Apparently, they're going to lose a couple guys on defense because they have so many free agents they can't keep everyone. Dallas's situation will only get worse because of Dak Prescott's cap hit. So they're going to lose even more talent. They can't afford to re-sign all these guys. I mean, the situation there is getting worse and worse and tighter. And the Giants are dealing with this Daniel Jones situation where he's asking for the Brinks truck and more. And so all of these things playing out, how will the Commanders fare? You know, one of the best offensive minds in the league, making a transition to one of the worst teams in the league. I think the Commanders were, they weren't not the worst team, but they certainly were in that middle of the pack to bad area. I mean, that's where they were. They were number 7 out of 32 NFL teams. They were 17 to 32. And so things should get better. The question is how much better. And this is an answer that a lot of people won't like because, believe it or not, I don't believe in hot takes. I believe in takes. And I'm not here to give all these, rile up fans or anything like that. I'm just here to give you my honest opinion. And I think the answer that nobody wants to hear, but they need to hear, is the Commanders and Eric Bieniemy will only be as good as their quarterback is. So we have heard that they are not going to start Taylor Heineke. He'll still be on the roster, but he'll likely be the backup to Sam Howell, who they believe they drafted a couple years ago will be the guy that can at least fare them through this next season. They want to see what he's got. I mean, he had a so-so performance with a passing touchdown, a pick, and I think it was less than 200 passing yards. And so he had that this season. And essentially, Sam Howell has certain things that look good. You know, at UNC, he broke so many different records there, I believe. The single-season passing yard, the career passing yard. He's got some good attributes to him. He knows how to win. He's got good talent. The question is just how well will he be with Eric Bieniemy? And I think, 10 wins used to mean a lot in the NFL, but because of the extra game and the extra week, now it feels like 11 wins is the new 10 wins. I think the Commanders can squeak their way to 11 wins. I think they can. The question here is, how good can Sam Howell be? And if he ends up being awful 4 games in, are they going to decide, you know what, we're going to put Taylor Heineke back in there? If you're dealing with Taylor Heineke for a full season, Taylor Heineke cannot win you 10 games, cannot win you 11 games. We've seen numerous years where he has been the starter, not the starter for the entire year. There's been other guys like Carson Wentz and whatnot, but we've seen him play Taylor Heineke is a good backup quarterback in the NFL. He gives a good vibe in the locker room. He's got moxie to him. Guys like him a lot. He's not going to win you 11 games in an NFL season. And I believe I was looking at their record over the past couple of years. The Commanders, previously the Washington football team, have been through a couple of years of 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins. And so they haven't quite hit that 10 threshold. And even if they did, like I said, 10 wins doesn't mean as much as it did back then. Now, 11 wins is really where it's at. It's that threshold of, okay, we're getting somewhere. So could the Commanders win 11 games? They could. I don't think they will. I don't think they're capable of winning with Sam Howell or with Taylor Heineke or a combination of both. I think if they really want to get competitive here, one of the best things they could probably do is go after Derek Carr, because then that would be a good team. And I could actually make an argument. I know it's still early and I don't have all the information in front of me, but I could make the argument, hey, the Commanders could win the NFC East if Derek Carr becomes their quarterback, because Derek Carr is a top 12 talent, a top 12 quarterback in this league. I think he has, I don't know if he's played his best football, or I don't know if his best football is behind him, but I think he can put up numbers and he can be formidable and he can be a game manager for a team that needs him. And I think him paired up with Eric Bieniemy would definitely be something to watch, and it would be a compelling case, and they would have a compelling case to say, hey, the Commanders might be able to win the NFC East, especially with the Giants experiencing so many problems, not being able to pay certain guys, the Eagles, who are sure to lose a ton of talent, especially because of how much they're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts, and the Dallas Cowboys, who are indefinitely dysfunctional, who will be dealing with a massive cap hit from Dak Prescott. This might be the perfect moment for the Commanders to rise above all of that and get a true guy, a real guy at the quarterback position, like a Derek Carr. Do I think they will, though? No. I don't think they'll get him, but it would be their best case scenario. They also could potentially draft someone. Maybe they draft an Anthony Richardson, a guy who's a project. I don't know. Eric Bieniemy is not a head coach, so it's tough to say because he's not going to be making the calls on draft day, and he won't have a say in who he's not going to have a massive say in who their quarterback is going to be next year. So it's kind of out of his hands. Because even if he did have a say, I mean, let's be honest here. I'm sure the Commanders have also had these honest conversations with Eric Bieniemy. Bieniemy is there to catapult his career and become a head coach somewhere else. So what's his contract? What's it like with the Commanders? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years maximum. I don't think he thinks he's going to be in there a long time. I don't think the Commanders think that if everything goes well, he's going to be there a long time. They're not going to give him a quarterback or draft a quarterback because he wants to build up that project. No, this is going to be I feel like it's going to be the wide perception is the Commanders will be a one and done with Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy coaches there for a year, and he either shows as an offensive coordinator and as the play caller, hey, I've got it. I can be a head coach in this league, or it fails miserably, and maybe he ends up going back to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. Who knows? But the answer that people don't want to hear when it comes to how good can the Commanders be, it depends on how good their quarterback is and who is starting for them under center day one. So this year, I started watching more college football than ever. If you watch this show or you follow me, you know that. I got really into the games this year. The format is becoming funner and funner. College football is back. The ratings are back. Attendance is through the roof, especially after the pandemic. And it'll only get better, especially with the expanded playoffs, which we've talked about on this show. But I've had a take on a particular player that I've been withholding for quite some time because I wanted to share it at this time of the year, because now this player is being talked about big time because the NFL draft is around the corner. And this player is widely considered the number one overall quarterback in the NFL draft this year and the number one overall pick, really. It's Bryce Young from Alabama. And in my opinion, I would stay away from Bryce Young. I know that'll upset many fans, but it is what it is. Bear with me here. Alabama has a history recently. Forget Jalen Hurts because he's an outlier and he transferred away. Let's take a look at Tua and at Mac Jones. These are guys who were throwing into big windows, who didn't have to throw into tight windows, whose accuracy didn't have to be perfect because they were playing with NFL wide receivers and they had an excellent offensive line blocking for them against smaller, less talented players from other schools. That's not what the NFL is. In the NFL, talent is irrelevant for the most part. These guys are very evenly matched when it comes to the trenches, offensive linemen and defensive linemen are just as big as one another. It's a real battle. It's more evenly matched. And quarterbacks from Alabama have a problem with that. Tua, prior to having Tyreek Hill, was awful, what we saw from him. Even with Jalen Waddle, he had his moments where he looked really bad. I mean, not everyone who comes out of Alabama as a quarterback is going to get to say, oh, I'm getting Tyreek Hill. They're not going to have that kind of separation in the NFL. They are not going to have these big windows that they feel absolutely comfortable throwing into that are totally safe. We have a history of this from Alabama quarterbacks. They don't go to other schools. They're not doubted. They're going to one of the best schools, if not the best school for football in the country. They are getting to play with the best talent, the best guys, the best coaching, the best facilities, and that doesn't work when mental fortitude and your ability to stay in the pocket and your ability to stay composed and win close games becomes paramount in the NFL. Tua and Mac Jones have shown you that. I don't want to hear about Tua this year. Tua had a cheat code. He had Mike McDaniel, who came from the 49ers offense, which was very quarterback-friendly, and he had Tyreek Hill, the fastest player in the NFL. And he had the fastest wide receiver duo in the NFL in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So Tua got a cheat code this year. He got a break. Mac Jones, he's showing you that with average NFL talent, he isn't able to elevate them. I do not think Bryce Young will be able to elevate the players around him once he gets to the NFL. We have a history of this from Alabama quarterbacks as of recently. Bryce Young is undersized. He's smaller than I'd like him to be. He is a little bit skinnier than I'd like him to be. His arm strength is nothing to write home about. And his mobility, it doesn't jump off the screen, especially when you compare it to some of the better guys in the NFL, like a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. He's not that. So for him to succeed in the NFL, he'd have to drop, and he's not going to because so many people are apparently in love with Bryce Young, and they want to draft him. He is not going to go to a good situation. He's not going to go to a Lions team with a great offensive line. He's not going to go to a team with a great defense. He is going to go to a dumpster fire with no talent, and he is going to be forced to elevate a team in the NFL versus NFL talent where the field could not be any more evenly matched. That's a problem for an Alabama quarterback, as we've seen in recent history, especially for a guy like Bryce Young, who's undersized, who isn't the prototype build of what you want your quarterback to look like in 2022. Not a big arm, not overly mobile. I do not see it working out with Bryce Young in the NFL, and I could be horribly wrong, but I just don't see it. So with that, we conclude this week's episode of the Benjamin Cure Show. Make sure to follow us on. I've stopped advertising the Facebook as much because I don't post clips on there. But clips are posted daily, pretty much every single day of the week, except for weekends, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. TikTok has over 2,000. We're growing on Instagram. We're going on Twitter. It's a lot of fun. Make sure to tune into those clips. Engage with the fans. The comments get real chippy out there, so that's definitely something to keep you entertained if you ever want to check it out. But for now, that is the end of this YouTube show of the Benjamin Cure Show. So I'll see you next time. Maybe we'll have more news next week, more on these developing stories like the Daniel Jones thing, which just drove me crazy. We'll see. Until next time, I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show.